With all the lies and deceit that happened during the second hide-and-seek test, Team B may as well have just been called Team Betrayal. I mean, the Sparebearers betrayed Hatz, then turned on the rest of the team. Endorsi deceived the fishermen, Ho took Rachel hostage, and Bam even betrayed Endorsi's feelings. All of which was meant to showcase a single truth about those who choose to climb the tower. Everyone is willing to give up something if it means achieving their own personal goals. When it comes down to it, everyone taking the test was pretty much the same, willing to go to whatever lengths in order to make it to that next stage. The only thing that differed between them was what they desired. That's a message that will become a lot more clear as we take a look at everything the anime missed out on, especially when we get to the parts involving Endorsi and Bam. So, let's begin. Episode 9, The One-Horned Ogre, covering Chapter 43 to Chapter 51 of the webtoon. Last time we left off, Bam's team was about to begin their hide-and-seek test. Because Endorsi had taken leadership and separated the fishermen from the rest of the groups, the Sparebearers wanted to lead a revolution that would serve to highlight themselves over everyone else. It was a ridiculous plan that involved attempting to capture the Ranker, a task they should know by now is practically impossible. But even knowing that, they still wanted everyone else to bait themselves so that they could be put into a position that would benefit them the most. So that's what Hatz was having to put up with. At around the same time, Serena was giving Ho a little background behind her motivations to climb the tower. What the anime didn't quite explain though was just how much of an effect the people around her had on her overall perspective. At first, her desire to become a Ranker combined with the rage from her past losses overwhelmed any sense of self she previously had. That's why during the first test she was able to kill without hesitation. At least that made her feel as if she was regaining control over her life. But as the tests continued, something began to change as she became closer to the people around her. It's only after she watched her friends from Team A work so hard to pass the test that she realized how she truly got to where she was now. So when she thought about having to use them as stepping stones to get up the tower, well, that was something that she just couldn't accept. It was in direct contrast to Ho, who could be seen as someone that fell into a similar situation but came out with the opposite mindset. He too lost everything he had, but unlike Serena, he was actually willing to sacrifice others in order to achieve his own goals. This was a mentality that he felt everyone should have accepted once they entered the tower. Just as Kun had said in the past, climbing the tower simply isn't possible without leaving others behind. That's just the way it is. Some people are willing to accept that, and some just can't. Switching back to Hatz, after taking care of the Sparebearers, he began to sense a strange aura of fury approaching through the Shinsu. Only Quant would be capable of such an intimidating presence. The thing is, it didn't make sense for him to be so angry considering that he just beat Team A. It was something that Hatz didn't really have time to worry about since Quant would immediately engage from the darkness. Now, the ensuing fight was meant to further showcase Quant's exceptional power as a Ranker. Hatz, who was one of the top duelists out of the regulars, could only understand after a direct encounter just how outclassed he really was. He now fully understood that Rankers are a completely different species all on their own. It didn't matter what he was before because Quant was clearly no longer human. The way he moved was something far superior to anything any human could accomplish. Now, the events in between this fight involving Endorsi and Bam played out a little bit differently than how we were shown in the anime. This whole scene was meant to further develop the relationship between the two of them, something that I feel the anime didn't quite do justice, especially since it becomes a very prominent plot point later on. So, while Endorsi was leading her group of fishermen, Bam seemed a little bit concerned about something else other than the test. It made her wonder if something was wrong. You see, she specifically chose Bam to be by her side for a couple of reasons. One was so that she could teach him a few crucial lessons, and the other was because she had faith in his abilities. The thing is, Bam didn't even have confidence in his own. He personally couldn't understand why it was that Endorsi chose him to be in her group. It was a mindset that she found to be weak, but at the same time, it was one that she couldn't scold him for because she once felt that same way as well. This is what led her to share her backstory. As we already know, Endorsi was once the youngest and weakest girl within one of the 10 families. Because of this, all she ever got to eat for months was cold, stale bread. But that all changed when her talent finally manifested. She was able to use it to beat a much bigger and older girl. The resulting dinner was so delicious that it spurred an insatiable curiosity as to what the other meals ahead of her would taste like. Sure enough, after only a few days, Endorsi was able to eat anything at that table. Now, The point of this story was to give Bam an idea of what was necessary to achieve one's own goals. So, to make sure that he understood what she was saying, Endorsi then asked Bam how he thought she was able to accomplish this feat. Bam naively responded in a way that Endorsi thought was a joke, but it was actually just Bam being his usual innocent self. Before the conversation could go any further, their lighthouse then sent them the message of Hatz encountering the Rancor. This was what Endorsi was waiting for in order to set her plan in motion. She immediately pulled out one of her mini needles, disabled the lighthouse, then marked a clear perimeter around herself and the other fishermen. It was a small circle in which there was only one rule: anyone who tries to leave will die. At first, the guy who was sucking up to her was a bit confused, but things became very clear when she quickly laid him out in a single hit. That's when Bam finally figured out the answer to Endorsi's previous question. What she was doing to these fishermen was the exact same thing that she did to the girls of her family to secure the food at the table. Just as that had led to her becoming a princess, eliminating the other fishermen was the easiest way to secure a spot in the final test. So, after having been just betrayed, the other fishermen believed that Bam was in on her plan as well. It led Ryan to try to attack him first, but Endorsi just sent him flying to the edge of the circle once again. It was an excessive display of force that was intended to teach Bam another lesson. What Endorsi wanted him to see was exactly what it took to climb the tower, to see what every person was willing to do in pursuit of their own ambitions. If Bam was willing to go this far for Rachel, then Endorsi would allow him to leave the circle. That was her condition. You see, up until now, Bam had participated in this test the least out of anyone. Unlike everyone else who were all committed to climbing the tower, Bam hadn't yet chosen what he wanted to do. He wasn't someone who could plan a betrayal like Ho, Endorsi, or the Spear Bearers, and he wasn't someone like Hatz who could willingly sacrifice himself for the success of his team. Bam was simply someone that lacked the conviction or resolve to establish what he himself wanted. He was so caught up in following a single person that he wasn't even able to decide for himself what it was he needed to do. This was the exact thing that bothered Endorsi the most. You see, Endorsi knows that Bam is aware Michelle is actually Rachel. Back when Bam was trying to convince her to sign the friends list, the very first name at the top of the list was actually Rachel's. This was Bam's way of indirectly telling her that he knows who Michelle really is. So, when Endorsi met Rachel back in the bathrooms a few chapters back, she left with the vague phrase of "should I tell?" Initially, we thought that this was her thinking that she should tell Bam that Michelle is Rachel, but it was actually the other way around. Endorsi wanted to tell Rachel that Bam already knew who she was. She wanted Rachel to know that Bam was only acting, to know that he was putting on a guise of ignorance because he believed that she didn't like him following her. This was the entire picture, and only someone who was acquainted with both sides would be able to see it as a whole. So, for someone as straightforward as Endorsi to see both Rachel and Bam act under these serious misconceptions, well, it was really starting to bother her. That's why she was working with Kun to set the stage for everything to be cleared up. Anyway, Ryan and Hong Chun-hwa were trying to figure out the best way to take on Endorsi. Hong was convinced that he could end the fight in a single strike if Ryan was able to buy him some time. But instead, Ryan just pushed Hong forward and tried to run away. Of course, Endorsi quickly caught up and knocked him down before he could even leave the circle. That's when Bam stepped in to try and stop her. Even though this guy had tried to attack him only moments ago, Bam was still convinced that they were teammates. He was once again being too naive for his own good. It was in this moment that Ryan saw an opportunity to take Bam hostage. But just like last time, Endorsi was too fast for him to even get close. This was part of the second lesson that Endorsi wanted to teach. In order to protect someone, you shouldn't hesitate to hurt others. It was yet another thing that Bam needed to accept if he was going to climb the tower with Rachel. The thing is, Endorsi was well aware that that just wasn't part of Bam's nature. So instead she just wanted Bam to give up. She wanted him to stop following Rachel and go find his own happiness. Deep down, Bam knew that everything Endorsi was saying was true. But that didn't mean that he had to accept it. For Bam, everything that was precious to him was already on this floor. The relationships he built and the friends he made were all here. If climbing the tower meant leaving those behind, then what was the point of even making it to the top? Everyone says that all you could possibly desire was up there. But how could anyone say that something they've never seen was the most amazing thing to exist? Bam just didn't see the point in fighting over something like that. If he did have to fight, it would only be to protect that which he thought was worth protecting. It was once again a point of view that Endorsi just couldn't understand. For someone who had to fight for everything they've ever wanted, it was a completely impractical state of mind. In the end, she was frustrated because Bam was walking down a path where he would inevitably have to hurt someone else. To her, the easiest thing to do would be to just abandon Rachel. But no matter how much she expressed that that was the case, Bam simply couldn't turn his back on her. Now, part of the reason that Endorsi was being so persistent was because she had a certain fondness towards Bam's innocence. So when Bam made up his mind to follow Rachel, it was pretty much as if she'd just been dumped. Clearly, Rachel was the most important to Bam, and as infuriating as that was, Endorsi knew that there was nothing she could do about it. So rather than chase after him, she simply let him go. Now, I could just be grasping at straws here, but I found it very interesting that in the anime, the blast mark that the ignition weapon left was shaped like a heart. It could just be a coincidence of design, or perhaps it could be something more symbolic to Endorsi's personal heartbreak, especially since there's even a line that goes through the heart. So I wouldn't be surprised if this was something intentional. Anyway, while all that was happening, Rachel was lured out of her lighthouse and taken hostage by Ho. While Ho was waiting for Bam to arrive, we got a closer look into the reason for his descent into madness. Ho found Bam's innate talent to be unfair. The way that he was able to learn Shinsu so fast made it seem as if God favored him over anyone else. He couldn't help but wonder why it was that Bam was blessed with so much talent when he didn't even have to give up anything. From Ho's perspective, he had everything taken away yet was only given a fraction of the power that Bam was. If God wasn't going to take anything in exchange for Bam's power, then Ho felt that it was his job to make things right. Bam needed to experience the same form of misery that he had. That was the only way that things could become fair. To his surprise though, the first person to arrive at the scene was actually Quant, which is where things start to get a lot different. First off, Quant was only able to find them because Rachel had used one of her lighthouses to create a path for him to follow. Then, Quant was acting a lot more confident with the situation at hand. It didn't really matter that Ho had a hostage because Quant could easily take him out before he could even react. That's where the safety zone comes into play. If you recall from last episode, the safety zone was an area of the stage where Quant couldn't do anything to the regulars. All Ho had to do was cross that line and he'd be safe. The thing is, Quant would have been fast enough to prevent that from happening had the spear bearers not interfered. They threw a spear at Quant just as he was about to attack. Not only did this force Quant to back off, but it also gave Ho enough time to get into the safety zone. And to make matters worse, the spear bearers had also taken a couple hostages themselves. Their plan was to use their teammates as bait in order to eliminate Quant. I mean, with hostages on both sides now, Quant's options just became very limited. Ho also had a lot to consider as well because things weren't going anywhere close to how he had planned. Really, the only option now was to go along with the Spear Bearers' revolution. So what he did was create a situation where it would be impossible for Quant to save everyone. If Quant went to attack the Spear Bearers, then Ho threatened to kill Rachel. And Quant couldn't save Rachel first because they were in the safety zone. It was a very annoying situation for Quant to be in. So rather than come up with a solution himself, he instead made it so that the regulars would have to choose what they were going to do next. Basically, Quant said that he wasn't going to do anything. The caveat was that if anyone died, then he would kill everyone else. It made it so that literally no one was safe. Clearly there was a lot more at stake in this situation than what the anime had shown. Of course, Rachel was the most at risk because she was in an area that Quant couldn't get to. So when Bam finally arrived, it became his job to rescue Rachel while Quant would take care of the Spear Bearers. That was the plan they came up with when Bam was frozen by Quant's Shinsu attack. What Quant did exactly was give Bam a bit of Shinsu that was manipulated in a way that could freeze any target. If Bam wanted to save Rachel, then he needed to imitate this exact flow and release it in a single Bam. It was the only thing that Quant could do to help save Rachel. Well, that's what he wanted Bam to think anyway. What Quant was really doing was giving Bam false hope so that he could go and save the other hostages. If Bam was distracted with trying to save Rachel, then Quant would have enough time to take care of the Spear Bearers. The thing is, Quant never actually believed that Bam could save Rachel. The Shinsu technique he showed him was one that he himself took hundreds of years to master. There was no chance that a rookie like Bam would be able to imitate it after only seeing it once. So, as you'd expect, it was extremely shocking to see Bam do exactly that. Quant began to think that perhaps Bam really was the monster that Ho was making him out to be. Now, before the big fight between Endorsi and Quant, there was a few scenes that showed what happened to Ryan and Hong. Hong simply wasn't fast enough to land an attack on Endorsi. She was far stronger than he could have ever imagined, and that only made him hate her more. She was given all the strength and power that she could hope for, yet would rather choose to betray her own teammates instead of choosing to take the test head-on. To him, she was just an evil girl unworthy of the title and power that she'd been given. Endorsi wasn't really bothered by these words though. She was well aware of what she was already. Everyone who's ever left her has always said that same thing. So in the end, it was something that she was used to. That's not to say that she was scared of taking on Quant though. In fact, Endorsi believed that she could beat Quant in a fight if she could get rid of his one-use limit of Shinsu. So that's exactly where she was heading to next. In the meantime, Ho was giving his whole backstory behind why he hated Bam. Ultimately, it boiled down to an overwhelming sense of envy. A feeling of unfairness that stemmed from God choosing Bam to have all the power. Even Quant now recognized this to be the case. But when he saw that Bam would shed tears for a friend who betrayed him, he found it ridiculous that Bam was the one chosen to foster such incredible power. You see, Quant knew that someone so strong wouldn't be able to maintain such lofty ideals when climbing the tower. Just like Endorsi, Quant became well aware of the lonely path that Bam was headed down. And once again, it was something that those who knew the true nature of the tower just couldn't understand. Now, when Endorsi had finally arrived, she laid out the two options that Bam had left. He could either help her beat Quant and continue up the tower with Rachel, or betray the team and cause her to fail so that she won't leave him behind again. The former would undoubtedly lead him towards suffering similar to what he experienced today, but Rachel would be happy. The latter would mean that Rachel would have to give up on her dreams and it would be entirely Bam's fault, but he would be there with Rachel. So whatever choice he was going to make, he needed to make it now. He would eventually decide to help Rachel reach her goal, reason being that his memories of her at her happiest was when she was looking towards the stars. He didn't want to be the reason that Rachel lost one of the things that she cherishes the most. Bam now knew from Ho that those who lose what's most important to them often lose their reason to live. It was in this moment that Bam's reason for climbing the tower changed from simply following Rachel. He now wanted to help Rachel achieve her dreams. Now, in the fight between Endorsi and Quant, there were more than a couple things that Quant had to look out for. Not only did Endorsi have the ignition weapon, but she also had a reel that she was using to try and grab Quant's tag with. She would lead an attack with her reel, then force Quant to dodge into the direction of her sword. Of course, a single hit from an ignition weapon wasn't enough to do significant damage. In fact, even with Quant using no Shinsu at all, both Bam and Endorsi's power combined still wouldn't be enough to beat him in a direct fight. The only reason Quant lost was because Endorsi tricked him into believing the tag was where she said it was. Now, what the anime didn't show was that Endorsi and Bam did in fact capture the tag with a combination of her skill with the reel plus Bam's freezing ability. So it's not like she just walked up and took it from him. She actually had to work pretty hard to capture it. That being said, any other ranker would have just steamrolled right through them. Quant just seems to make the rankers look weak. But yeah, that was pretty much the end of the hide-and-seek test and the end of episode 9. It was a little bit of a longer cut content, but there was definitely some important themes worth mentioning, especially regarding Bam's turning point plus Endorsi's development. Anyway, that's pretty much all for today. So, as always, thank you so much for watching, and if you enjoyed this type of anime content, then you already know what to do. So, until next time, ciao!